A prisoner suddenly gets released from prison and starts killing people one by one. But taking revenge on these people was not for sending him to prison. Rather, it was a much more intense revenge story. What was that revenge? And to know how he takes this extreme revenge, you have to watch the entire video. I am talking about deadly action thriller movie Faster, released in 2010. So without further ado, let's start today's movie explanation. At the beginning of the movie, we see a scene from an American prison. A prisoner named Jimmy Cooler is seen standing inside the prison. His real name is Jimmy, but people know him as Driver. And it is the day of his release from prison. At the very moment of his release, he is looking at a picture in his hand. He is looking at this picture with an emotional look. Looking at Jimmy's face, it is understood that a storm is going on inside his mind. After a while, 2 police officers came and handcuffed him and took him to the warden's room. After all the processes, he was released from the prison. After being released, Jimmy came out and took a list in his hand, which had the names of some people written on it. He had a lot of old scores to settle with these people. After crossing the deserted desert, he now has to cross the prison's boundaries and return to the city. But there was no car waiting for him there, so he started running along the road at high speed in the scorching sun. After running for a long time like this, he reached a garage. When he got there, he removed the cover without saying anything to anyone and took out a car. From inside this car, he took out a revolver and took it in his hand. Then, he started the car with the car key and started driving at high speed. Looking at his style from the beginning of the movie, it is understood how strong his nerve is. However, after coming to the city with his car, he parked the car on one side of the road and walked across the middle of the road. Meanwhile, the cars coming on the road are forced to brake hard one by one when they see him. But he ignores everything and crosses the road in a limbo manner between the moving cars. Then he enters an office and keeps looking for someone without saying anything to anyone. After searching here and there, he comes to a desk and aimed his revolver directly at the man sitting at that desk. Before the man can understand anything, he shoots him in the head. Damn. When the beginning of the movie is so exciting, you can't even imagine what kind of adventure is going to come in the future. However, the man Jimmy has killed, 2 FBI detectives, Cop and Cicero, are given the responsibility of investigating it. Cicero cannot accept Cop as his partner because there was a lot of trouble between them before. However, leaving all the troubles behind, they both start investigating the case together. The office where the man was killed was the office of a telecommunications company. Jimmy's face was clearly visible on the CCTV camera in the room. Both of them could see the CCTV footage that the man Jimmy had gone to kill. He already knew that man, due to which the man's face showed a great fear as soon as he saw Jimmy. That means there is some kind of previous acquaintance between them. Now these detectives need to know what that history is. On the other hand, after Jimmy committed this act, he met a man named Roy. He was the man who arranged a revolver and a car for him. Roy also gave him the target list he had in his hand. When Jimmy told him the names of the rest of the people on the list, he demanded double payment from him. Then Jimmy threatened him and said that Roy's friend Kane wanted to come and attack him. This Kane was a UFC champion, meaning he had the power to completely separate the flesh and bones of someone at any moment. But then, suddenly, when he saw the tattoo on Jimmy's car, he got very scared and ran away from there. Roy himself didn't even understand what the story was about. He necessarily gave Jimmy the names of the other people unconditionally. That is, you can understand that Jimmy is out to kill some people, but we will find out what his enmity is with them later in the movie. Meanwhile, in the next scene, we see a hitman named Killer. This handsome man was having a great time with his girlfriend Lily. But suddenly, someone calls Killer and tells him that a mission has come for him. The client that calls Killer, he has a risk of his life, meaning someone wants to kill him. Now, you can understand that this someone is Jimmy. According to the client's demand, before Jimmy kills him, Killer has to finish him off. So Killer also says goodbye to his girlfriend Lily and sets off with all his weapons to kill Jimmy. Meanwhile, Cicero and Cop find several clues while investigating this. Cicero tells Cop that Jimmy went to jail for robbing a bank many years ago. He was not supposed to go to jail after robbing the bank because he successfully escaped from the police after robbing the bank. Now, the car in which they escaped was driven by Jimmy, and for this reason, he was nicknamed Driver. However, when the police chased them on the way back from the robbery, Jimmy's extraordinary driving skills helped them escape. But after the escape, another gang appears and took all the money away from them by making them hostages. It's like a big robbery on top of a robbery. Anyway, The guys threaten that if they don't find the money, they will kill Jimmy's friends one by one. But after they really kill two of them, all that's left is Jimmy and his brother Gary. To save Jimmy's brother, he tells them where the stolen money is hidden. But even after those guys get the money, they slit the throat of his brother Gary and kills him in front of Jimmy. Seeing this brutal death of his brother, he seems to be speechless. Then the gang leader Tyson orders Jimmy to be killed too, and he himself records that scene on camera. Tyson was a terrible psycho who used to record every murder he committed, and on his orders, they shoot Jimmy and leave. But the amazing thing is that in low caliber, the bullet has hit his head and pierced his skull, but did not cause any damage to Jimmy's brain, and because of which Jimmy almost miraculously survived, and a metal plate was placed on his skull. You see, at the beginning of the movie, we didn't find out the reason for Jimmy's actions, but now it is clear that he came here to take revenge on his brother's death, and this is now his only goal in life. Now, after getting information about the entire gang from Roy, he targets to finish off everyone one by one. The second person on Jimmy's list was Tyson. Meanwhile, the person who had given the contract to Killer to kill Jimmy knew about his next target. So he sent Killer there so that he could finish Jimmy off. Meanwhile, Killer also reached on the given location. But Jimmy went inside and confronted Tyson beforehand. This psycho Tyson was preparing to kill a girl. Jimmy came in front of him and shot him in the forehead like before. After finishing Tyson, he is confronted by Killer as he leaves the house. But before Killer can shoot him, Jimmy starts shooting at him indiscriminately, due to which Killer is forced to go for cover to save himself. After that, both of them fire a few rounds at each other, but after a while, Killer sees that Jimmy has completely disappeared from there like a ghost. After a while, Killer hears the sound of a car from outside and sees that Jimmy has left the place with his car. That means that he has already completely failed the mission to kill Jimmy. On the other hand, when the news of this shootout reaches the detectives, they go there to investigate. But the detective cop was taking his son to a baseball game at that time. So even after receiving the news, he reaches the scene 2 hours late. Then he learns from the Cicero that numerous video clips of killing have been recovered from Tyson's house, and the video of Gary's killing is also found there. After collecting all this evidence, Cop and Cicero continue their investigation in full swing. Meanwhile, while working, Cicero suddenly notices a strange tattoo on Cop's hand. Now, after questioning him about this tattoo, he tells him that he got this tattoo when he was in another police department. And by saying this, he somehow avoids the matter. On the other hand, Jimmy goes to a house of another person. However, this time the person was not a target. She was his old lover Porterman. After Jimmy went to prison many years ago, the contact between them gradually decreased. Now Porterman has arranged her own new family, although they both truly loved each other. But fate has separated the two of them. However, although Porterman was angry at first when he saw him, later they both became emotional. While saying goodbye to Jimmy, Porterman says that she knows what punishment Jimmy is giving those people, because she has already seen all the news on TV. She tells Jimmy that those people should not be spared at all, because it was because of these people that their lives were separated. Meanwhile, after the contract to kill Jimmy failed, Killer suddenly proposes to his girlfriend Lily, because he felt that he should leave all this and return to his normal life. And when Lily accepts his marriage proposal, the two get married. Then, immediately after the wedding, Killer promises Lily that he will leave this path. That is, he will not do any more contract killings from today. Meanwhile, even though the detective cop is going to return home after his work, his wife Mariana does not want to let him enter the house, because Mariana did not like Cop's drug habit at all. At the beginning of the movie, we also see a scene of Cop taking drugs. Although he was unrecognizable then, it is clear now that he is heavily intoxicated. However, after much pleading and apologizing, Mariana lets him into the house. He really wanted to spend time with his family, so his wife lets him stay with their son Tom for a while. However, in the middle of the night, Cop suddenly finds his wife lying in the washroom. He is surprised to see that Mariana herself has become intoxicated with her own dose. When Cop asks her why she did this, she says, "Neither of us will be forgiven for what we did in the past. We will both go to hell now." But it is not clear to us what sin Mariana is talking about here. Now, from the beginning, the connecting scenes with each character seem a bit confusing, don't you think? Come on, don't worry. You will get the answer to every question by the end of the movie. Meanwhile, at that time, Jimmy had found his third target. The bouncer, that guy named Nixon, worked at a nightclub in the city. Jimmy went in front of the club and saw him, and then walked towards the club to kill him. But before he could enter, the club's security guard recognized him quite well. So, finding nothing, they let him in, and after entering there, Jimmy started quietly follow Nixon. While following him, he got the perfect opportunity. When Nixon entered the washroom, Jimmy appeared behind him like the angel of death. Nixon saw him in the mirror and realized what was going to happen to him. So he sent the other person inside the washroom out and closed the door from the inside. And now he is ready for a hand-to-hand fight with Jimmy. Jimmy takes out a cleverly hidden screwdriver from his body. Even after much checking before entering this club, the guard could not find this screwdriver from him. I mean, you can understand that Jimmy is a professional level killer. However, both Nixon and Jimmy take a fighting stance and attack each other. To respond to Jimmy's attack with the screwdriver, Nixon also takes out his knife and jumps on him. But Jimmy easily overpowers him and slits his chest. Nixon, who is lying on the ground in a state of momentary state, apologizes to Jimmy for his past actions. Then he tells Jimmy to call his son from his phone and tell him that his father has said sorry to him. Jimmy takes the phone in his hand and leaves from there. Then he comes out and sits in the car and calls Nixon's son and tells him that Nixon has said sorry to him. On the other hand, Killer sits in his house and looks at his old pictures while looking at the wedding pictures. While looking at these pictures, suddenly Jimmy's picture appears on the screen. And seeing his picture, he is completely shocked. He had forgotten that he had this job left. This time, he starts rubbing his gun to kill Jimmy again. Now, seeing this incident, his wife Lily gets very angry because Killer promised her that he would leave these jobs. But Killer tells her that he cannot leave this job unattended before finishing Jimmy, because there is no rule for contract killers not to finish the contract once they take it. However, on the other hand, the detective cop wakes up in the morning after spending the whole night at his house and sees the news of the attack on Nixon and assumes that Jimmy attacked him. Although he thought him dead this time, Nixon finally survived and is now in the hospital. This time, Cop thinks that this is his chance to arrest Jimmy. Because since Nixon is alive, Jimmy must come to that hospital to kill him. And so Cop quickly headed towards that hospital. Actually, his guess was right. While driving, Jimmy heard on the radio that Nixon had survived, so he turned the car around at high speed and headed towards the hospital. On the other hand, Killer had already arrived in front of the hospital, because his contractor had given him information that Jimmy would come to this hospital to kill Nixon. That means it is clear that Tyson did not hire him, but the person who contracted him was someone else. However, Cop's guess was right. According to his guess, Jimmy went to the hospital to finish Nixon completely. The doctors at the hospital were busy performing surgery on Nixon at that time. In this situation, Jimmy went there and killed Nixon, who was on the operating table, with one shot. Then, as he quickly started to leave the hospital, Cop, who had been lying in wait for him, heard the gunshots and started looking for him. After searching for a while, they both faced each other and started shooting at each other. But the bullets didn't hit anyone, but instead hit the hospital lamps and they started breaking. At one point, Jimmy stopped shooting, and Cop slowly moved forward through the darkness. Just then, Jimmy came and pointed a revolver at him, and he dropped the pistol from his hand and knelt down. Cop thought that this was the last moment of his life, but to his surprise, Jimmy let him go, because he was only angry at his brother's murderers. He had no intention of killing any innocent people or police. This time, when Jimmy left him and left in his car, Killer suddenly started chasing him. That is, Killer was also waiting outside the hospital, as per his contract. This time, when Jimmy saw Killer following him, he increased the speed of the car several times. After a while, a chase takes place at high speed. Finally, Jimmy suddenly applies a fatal brake and stops his car in the middle of the road. This time, he shoots at the tire of Killer's car, but Killer directly shots on Jimmy's neck. But since he is wearing a tight belt around his neck, he is not hurt much. This time, after being shot, Jimmy drives away with his car at high speed, when Killer receives a call. In this call, he is told to terminate the contract, because he has failed to kill Jimmy despite several attempts. Meanwhile, Jimmy goes straight to his house, and he points the gun at his mother and asks where his stepfather is. It is seen that there is no emotion left on Jimmy. That is why he does not hesitate to point a pistol at his mother. This thirst for revenge has turned him into stone. His mother tells him that his father died several years ago. Now, Jimmy thinks that his stepfather sold their information to the gang. Gary told his father before going on the bank robbery, so he demanded half of the share from them. But since Gary did not agree, Jimmy believes that he leaked their information. But his mother tells him that this old man would not kill his own son. Rather, he loved Gray more than Jimmy. and he considered Gary his own son. His mother asks him why he went to do this with Gary that day. Because he never involved himself in such bad things. He was a good person like other ordinary people. Then Jimmy tells his mother that Gary actually owed a lot of money to several gangsters, so they had no other option but to rob the bank to pay that money. But in this operation, the one who was supposed to drive the car suddenly withdrew himself, so Jimmy agreed to help him. In other words, after he went to help his brother, he lost his brother. In that sense, he had to serve 10 years in prison for him, coming back from the brink of death. Since then, his mind has become as hard as stone. Anyway, Jimmy now says goodbye to his mother and goes to kill his fourth victim. His victim is currently a priest who conducts various religious seminars. However, many years ago, this man was a member of that gang. When Jimmy went straight to his ashram, the man was completely shocked to see him. Then he announced a music break at his event and went to another room with Jimmy. This man named Alexander knew very well that Jimmy had come here to kill him. So the man asked his wife and son to go home and took Jimmy outside for a walk. Then he slowly started telling the story of how his life had changed in 10 years. 10 years ago, Alexander was joined that gang just for money. He did not engage in any kind of murder. His job was just to guard the door. When the people were going to kill Gary, Alexander could not bear it and screamed. Even though he was part of this disgusting act for money, he was not a bad human being. The interesting thing is that at the end of this story, he went to jail once. And after returning from jail, he completely focused on the path of religion. He started helping boys like him who were in danger due to lack of money, and thus he became a priest. Jimmy did not get convinced at all after hearing all his story. Still, Alexander told him, "I can't bring your brother back, but before you kill me, at least forgive me for what happened to him." But Jimmy told him that he could not forgive anyone. Then Alexander knelt in front of him and waited for his death. And Jimmy pointed his revolver at him and fired a shot. But later it turns out that he actually fired the shot over his head. That is, even though his mind was as hard as a rock, he still had some flexibility. So he left Alexander and went to the prayer hall. Alexander was the last target on his list. So this time he started thinking that maybe his work was over here. So this time he sat down to pray. But at that very moment, Killer came in front of him and pointed a pistol at his head. However, he immediately did not kill Jimmy, but asked him to take the revolver from in front of him. But Jimmy said that he had no problem with Killer. But Killer started thinking that Jimmy had mocked him by calling him a noob, because, despite several attempts, he could not kill him. Then he picked up his revolver and wanted to shoot him with it. But later he started laughing when he saw the target list in front of him. And he says, "What? You think your job is over here? No, your job is not over yet, because the one who hired me to kill you is still missing." Hearing this, Jimmy suddenly remembers that no one has been able to identify the man who shot him that day. That means that man hired Killer. But the question is, who is this man? In the midst of these thoughts, Cop suddenly appears there. He has already tracked Jimmy's movements and has come all the way here. As soon as enter at the church, he asks Killer to drop the pistol in his hand. But Killer is not willing to give up his victim in any way. However, in the end, he is forced to drop the revolver, and Cop immediately shoots Jimmy in the head without a moment's hesitation. Then Killer realizes that the man who actually hired him is the same man, Cop. Then he confesses to him that he was the man who shot Jimmy 10 years ago. That is, he was a member of that gang. That's why Cicero saw this tattoo on his hand. He also said that Gary and Jimmy were handed over to them by Gary's then-girlfriend Marina, who is now Cop's own wife. That's why she said while getting drunk that, "We're both going to hell for what we did in the past." But Jimmy thought that his father might be the reason for this. Oh my god, there was so much twist at this stage, even I did not imagine. After hearing the news of Jimmy's return, Cop hired a killer to kill Jimmy. But since Killer failed to do his job, he finally had to go straight into action. After finishing Jimmy, Killer's job is also over here. So Cop wants to offer him his payment, but Killer does not take that money, because he could not fulfill his mission. Saying goodbye to Cop, Killer calls his girlfriend Lily to tell her that he is returning home, and his hitman journey is also over here. On the other hand, after finishing Jimmy, Cop comes out and calls his wife to tell her that he has finished Jimmy. That means now all their tension is over, and from now on they can start a new life safely. But before he can finish speaking, Jimmy suddenly comes from behind and shoots him in the back. Cop, who falls to the ground after being shot, cannot understand how Jimmy is alive even after being shot in the head. Then Jimmy tells him that he might have forgotten that Jimmy's skull is made of metal plates. That is, Jimmy has survived even after getting shot twice in his head. And after saying this, he shoots him in the skull and sends him to hell. Thus, his revenge is finally and completely fulfilled. On the other hand, after Jim finishes Cop and leaves, the detective Cicero arrives there. While investigating this case, she realizes that Cop was actually the missing puzzle, who was after Jimmy. Interestingly, the sergeant did not give Cop this case on his own. Rather, he took this case on his own request. After sifting through some old files, the detective discovers the truth, but it is too late for the cop. When she actually arrives at the scene, she finds that Jimmy has already killed Cop and sent him to hell. On the other hand, after Jimmy takes ultimate revenge for his brother's brutal death, he finally peacefully floats his brother's ashes in the river. And that's how the deadly revenge story of killing ends here. So if you liked the video, don't forget to give it a like, and subscribe to our channel for more great action movies. Until then, stay safe and healthy. See you in the next video. Until then, may God protect you.